In the last question on the paper, we're showing two towns which are joined by a road, and they're saying that a second road is going to be built exactly halfway between. So if we see that, we're thinking in our heads, we should be already thinking about midpoints and running perpendicular to the first road. So the perpendicular means that it's going to run at 90 degrees, to the road that's already there. So what do we call a line which runs at 90 degrees to another line and crosses through the midpoint? It's called the perpendicular bisector. So this question is actually asking you to find the perpendicular bisector of the line that runs from Halifax to Huddersfield. So in order to find the perpendicular bisector, like I just said, it needs to go through the midpoint. So we need to find the value of the midpoint there. For the midpoint, we're going to find halfway between the x-coordinates by adding them and dividing by 2, and halfway between the y-coordinates by adding them and dividing by 2. So the midpoint is going to be at 15 over 2, we'll leave it as a fraction, 15 over 2 on the x-axis, and 7 plus 22 over 2, so 11 on the y-axis. So you get some marks, or you would get some marks for saying that this is the midpoint. Okay. Now, when we're talking about straight lines, the other thing we're interested in is the gradient. So what's the gradient of this first, the line that's already been drawn from Halifax to Huddersfield? Well, we say change in y over change in x. And the change in y is, well, we go from 7 up to 15, so we go up 8. And the change in x from 3 to 12, we go across 9. So the gradient of the line that's already there is 8 over 9. Now the gradient of the perpendicular bisector is the negative reciprocal of the line that's already there. Or in other words, the two gradients must multiply to make minus 1. So if 8 over 9 is the gradient we've already got, we want it to multiply by something to make minus 1. So in order to get a minus, it's going to need to be a negative. We can tell that because the slope's going down, and it would have to be the reciprocal of what we've already got. So negative 9 over 8. Okay, so I'm just going to go onto a clean page. I need a bit more space. But what do we know already? Well, we know that the gradient of the perpendicular bisector is going to be negative 9 over 8. And we know it's a straight line, so we can write it in this form. But how do we find the plus b? We can't see where it goes through on the graph. But we do know that it's going to pass through the midpoint. So we know a pair of coordinates. We know that when x is 15 over 2, y is 11. So we can substitute those values for x and y and find b. So 11 equals negative 9 over 8 times 15 over 2 plus b. And then 9, when we multiply fractions, numerator times numerator, denominator times denominator, 9 lots of 15 is 135, keep the minus sign there, and 8 times 2 is 16, plus b, and that's equal to 11. So to get the plus b on its own, I need to move this to the other side, so it's 11 plus 135 over 16 is equal to b. Now if I'm going to be adding fractions, I need them to be over the same denominator. So how can I get 11 as 11 divided by 16? Well, I need to multiply by 16. So I want it to be something over 16 plus 135 over 16. And I want this value here to equal 11. So 11 times 16 would be 176. So 176 over 16, that's the same as saying 11, plus 135 over 16. Well, now they're over a common denominator of 16. So we can just add 176 and 135, which comes to 311. So I know that b, the plus b, is going to be at 311 over 16. So if we go back and substitute the b, minus 9 over 8x plus 311 over 16. Now the only other thing we need to take note of was that it said, give your answer, let's just check exactly. It said, write down the equation in the form ax plus by plus d equals 0, where a, b, and d are elements of z. Okay, what's this? Z. These are integers or whole numbers. Now, if we look at our equation at the moment, we don't have whole numbers. We've got fraction, and it also doesn't equal 0. So I've got to rearrange this to make it into the form that they're asking for. So I need the y, I need the x, I need everything on one side and 0 on the other. So if I move things across, That would be 9 over 8x plus, or rather, plus y, yeah, minus 311 over 16, and that equals to 0. If we want to get rid of the fractions, I need to multiply by the highest denominator, which is by 16. So if I multiply everything here by 16, then I'm going to get 16y, or positive 16y, minus 311 equals to 0. And then if I did 9 lots of 16, that would be 144. Okay, because I'm doing this part now. 9 lots of 16 is 144, and 144 divided by 8 is 18. So this is the same as saying 18x. So your final answer should be all whole numbers, everything on the left-hand side, and equaling to 0 on the right.